Yo, what is going on YouTube? It is your boy GZTV back with another video, and here we are with You, Season 1, Episode 2, the second episode. A really crazy premiere to start this show off, and now we have to deal with the aftermath. So, just kind of getting into it, we're going to have one massive discussion. Let's just get into it. We're going to talk about what happened in the episode, kind of have, again, a little bit of a discussion, a little bit of a review, how I feel about the direction of the show, all this stuff. So, let's go. So, when I first saw Joe clock Benji over the head in the premiere, I assumed he had killed him, only to find out slightly later that he had only given him a dangerous, bloody head injury and locked him in his little vault here with these, book collectibles. It's actually really interesting how they took that narrative, flipped it on its head, flipped the expectations. Yeah, it was so crazy how they decided to do that, because when you watch the scene in the series premiere and you see the guy get smacked in the head, it's like, oh wow, he probably fractured his skull and killed him. No, he's just left super bloody. So after seeing the second episode of the season, which is pretty much an episode of Joe trying to work out whether or not he should kill Benji for real this time, I'm so glad Benji didn't die in the series premiere. I think it really created some awesome opportunities for this show that they could seize and take advantage of and make it so much better as a story, so much creepier as a story. So the showrunner and the writers, narrative masterminds. I gotta give it to them. They did great here. When it comes to playing with tropes and subverting audience expectations in very productive ways, I think, so far, very early on as I'm watching the show, I noticed that to be a very strong point. Plenty of storytellers can pull the rug out from under the viewer, reader, whatever media you're talking about, but only the best do it for a good reason past surprising their viewers. A reason that transcends past the moment to make the story consumer think. You gotta really think about this. We don't want something to be just straightforward, and even if it's not straightforward, we don't want something to be a trope. We don't want it to be something that other show creators have done in the past. Very good storytelling here on the show. That's all I gotta say. In this episode, you kind of launch into intense character studies of Benji and Beck through the eyes and perspective of Joe. I think that's one of the major, just laying some groundwork for the show. I think that's one of the major purposes of this episode. What do we learn about the sensitive bookstore manager and part-time killer? We learn how patient and methodical he is. A lot of serial killers and stuff are super impatient, but this guy, he's not really a serial killer. I don't think he really is a killer. Right now, he really isn't. But there are rare moments when Joe acts impulsively, telling Beck that the older couple in the restaurant is them in 30 years for one. He has plenty of patience. Impatience at times. That's not patient. That's impatience, because he's already striking a question we're going to be together for the next 30 years, which it was kind of weird, and I thought on Joe's part that was fucking strange. But most of the time he is in complete control of his actions, and to a certain extent the actions of the people around him, or at least he likes to think so. He likes to be that egomaniac. It's that delusion that Joe can control the situation to the degree that Beck will fall in love with him that drives everything he does and makes him such an intriguing character as you're watching this. I feel like Joe has a myriad of health issues that haven't really been revealed on the show. That's one of my things, But, I don't know. I feel like he's obsessed, delusional, and has some serious control issues, and those could be a problem for him going forward. He has created a logic for the world, himself, and the people around him that he is not able to see past. So Joe doesn't seem to see other people as people so much as characters in a story that he is writing, except for Beck, obviously, who is really important to him at the very moment. Therefore, the weight of, say, killing one of them doesn't seem to land so heavily on Joe. He doesn't seem to be remorseful, even though he's never killed anyone before. When he's discussing it, thinking about it, he's very cold-minded about it. And you see this on shows all the time. That's really what makes this such a menacing storyline to look at. He didn't kill a fully realized person. He is the only fully realized person. He did what was necessary for the story, for his story, for the last nice guy living in New York, which is the title of the episode. Something tells me that he didn't give Benji much comfort in his final gasping moments. So super unsettling if you're Benji. We understand just how much Joe relies on books for guidance, just how sacredly he holds them in this little vault. We see a flashback to when he was younger, and the owner of the bookstore slapped Joe across the face when he admitted to not having read all of the Oz books. So we're getting, it's very important that shows do this. We're getting some flashbacks, we're getting some origin stories about this guy that really makes how he acts now super, significant and holds significance for the series. He locked young Joe inside of the book murder vault with the presumed intention that he wouldn't be let out until he had read them all. Now we know where Joe learned it. He pretty much was forced into the culture of books. So here we are. We learn a lot about Benji in this episode too. Mostly that he is the worst. I mean, we've already had this douchebag stereotype kind of laid out for us in the first episode, but now we're really getting it here. So talking about Benji some more, we learned that he's entitled, selfish, and not used to having to face consequences of any kind. He seems very spoiled. He seems like his life has been super smooth, especially compared to a guy like Joe's. He also once accidentally killed someone during a hazing ritual and kept the video evidence as potential blackmail on his friends who were also there. I mean, this really lets you know the type of asshole this guy is. That's the kind of guy we're dealing with here. In many ways, Benji's terribleness is helpful to Joe because it justifies him killing him. In the show, kind of putting this asshole in his way kind of helps the audience find some connection and justify a killer, which is something that so many, countless TV shows have done in the past. It's pretty convenient that the person you are looking for blackmail of the highest order on once manslaughtered someone that has visual evidence, video evidence. If there exists an easy way out for someone in Joe's position, then this is it. You have to do it. I don't know. You have to make it an easy decision. Which is why it says so much about Joe that he doesn't take it, instead declining to murder Benji via peanut allergy. He kills him in something that seems natural, So his reasoning, he does it for Beck, of course, so that she won't ever be forced to become the kind of girl Benji makes her. So yeah, Joe does this. His motivation is that he doesn't want her to become this type of girl that Benji makes her. Again, this takes all measure of autonomy for Beck. To Joe, she isn't a full person who is responsible for her own decisions. She's a treasure to be won, a princess to be saved. He does, to an extent, kind of see this girl also as a thing, a pawn in his life story. So the scariest part of Joe's logic is that there's usually a kernel of truth to it. He sees a reality of the world but learns the wrong lessons from it. For example, as Joe is torturing Benji, Beck spends much of the episode dealing with her creep of a college professor. So there's creeps on other sides of the fucking spectrum too. When he makes a move on her and she rebuffs him, calling him out on it, he takes away her TA position with him, which will also mean her losing her student housing. The professor is forcing Beck into a role, and as a poor female grad student, she only has so many options. She has to pay for housing, so it's she's not just gonna, be like, oh, okay, it's fine, I'm losing this job. The episode even plays with the idea that Beck might choose to accept her professor's advances to play this narrow role society has left her. Joe sees this and wants to save Beck from the patriarchy. But this is like fighting fire with fire. He's totally taking away Beck's choice. You're not letting her live a life. You're not letting her be a human being. Luckily, Beck sees another way out of the situation. She gives Professor Creep another chance. One, I must say, he doesn't deserve. Ask him to find her another position with a different professor. He tells her that he can't in good conscience ask another professor to take her on midway through the semester. He actually uses the phrase in good conscience, which did make me want Joe to lock him in the little vault there. I see what you did there. The show creators. Instead, Beck goes full-on Veronica Mars. She finds 6 other women who has also been harassed by Professor Creep and threatens to go to expose them. At the time, this probably wouldn't have mattered even a few years ago, but now the #MeToo movement is gaining enough power and momentum that Professor Creep has to reconsider. He accepts Beck's demands, and you're kind of left worrying about those 6 other women and if they told Beck their stories in the hopes that he would finally be brought publicly down. That Beck, she's complicated, man. She does it to save her own ass. She doesn't do it to help these other women, even though these girls probably told her that, a favor for a favor, and she really didn't do that. She's also totally into Joe. or at least into the idea of him. She visits him at the bookstore to give him a thank you donut and kiss for his helpful advice when it came to dealing with Professor Creep. She's totally falling for his nice guy routine, and why wouldn't she? I mean, he does seem like a nice guy on the surface. It's like super easy to be fooled by a guy of this stature. From the outside, Joe seems great. I mean, a patient, down-to-earth lover of books. And Beck is far too concerned with her own stuff to worry if the guy she just started casually dating is secretly stalking her and murdering her ex-partners. She doesn't give a fuck about that. Like, she only cares to just get to know the guy simply. A little bit. Maybe not that much. However, that's not going to be true forever. You got to be very excited and very nervous to see what will happen if and when Beck begins to grow suspicious, and what Joe looks like when he starts to lose control of the narrative, when he actually starts to get exposed for who he really is. Because so far in the story, we haven't really seen that much conflict for this guy. Some very fantastic stuff are in store. I feel like based on what has been happening right now. So, kind of getting into some reviews and some extra stuff, it's kind of weird, what happened to Candace. It is strongly implied that Joe might have murdered her, too. According to Candace's friend, she disappeared to Rome with some new guy without any notice. Did Joe kill her? Or does he have her locked up in another soundproof room he has access to? There's a lot of skeletons in his closet that are starting to kind of emerge, as we're learning more about him, as he's seeing people he knows from his past, which he'd probably rather not. But I kind of love that one of Joe's tests of Benji is which are 5 favorite books says about you. It sounds like something straight out of BuzzFeed. I thought that was a funny moment too. Joe's distracted fake Benji tweets that are still so incredibly on brand are some of the highlights of the episode as well, and also one of the many layers of information this show feels comfortable throwing at its viewers at once. Thank you for having high expectations for your viewers. Being able to catch on to that, and yeah. So, I mean, also, is it just me, or is Joe really bad at in-person spying? Realistically, if it weren't for plot devices, this guy should be caught. He's always just, right there. I don't know. Maybe this works better in NYC with all these people walking around. And I'm super intrigued by Benji's insistence that Beck is not what she seems. Who is? And this observation has gone through the filter of Benji's life perspective, but that doesn't mean there isn't something to it. I'm looking forward to learning more about Beck as well. Learning more about the characters in general is something you've always got to stick around for in these shows, instead of just watching the first couple episodes and be like, meh, let's turn it off. I like that Joe is a murderer who is also I don't want to kill you. That doesn't make any sense. That would be a lot of work. I have to clean you up. I have to clean up the fucking scene and make sure I don't get caught. I don't like you. I want you to die, but I don't want to kill you. Wait. And how is Peach related to J.D. Salinger? Also, is she into Beck? It seems like she might also be in love with her. Also, how is she already on to Joe? It's pretty impressive. And you have there's a lot of Peach related questions and that's another character that could be, and it feels like Paco might eventually be Joe's downfall and one of the things standing in his way as well, so that'll be interesting to watch. This kid knows that Joe is up to something sketchy in the basement, and he knows about Joe's tricks of hiding things in the ceiling, or Paco will become Joe's murder apprentice. It could really go either way there. And Ethan, Joe's bookstore employee, is far too pure for this world. You gotta be worried about him for even being associated, affiliated, even knowing who Joe is. But yeah, that is going to do it for the review of the episode. I tried to cut this down compared to the pilot. I don't want these episodes to be super long because I know, people get super impatient. I understand that completely. And yeah, we're going to be watching the playoff games tonight. If there are any good games, we are going to be talking about those on the channel. I'm also watching Ready or Not, sorry about the laundry room, which is a 2019 horror film. Or getting back to kind of watching some of those so I can work on finishing my scratch it poster for the summer. But yeah, we have about, I don't know, 11 or 12 movies left, so about 6 weeks. So we should get it done by the end of the summer. Peace out, guys.